Welcome. I am not the Crown Prince of Norway. I am but a humble peasant, Robert Strand, the Executive Director of the Nordic Center here at the University of California, Berkeley, and the Center for Responsible Business at Berkeley Haas. It is my honor to welcome you to today's event and my esteemed privilege to welcome His Royal Highness Crown Prince Haakon back home to the University of California, Berkeley, and more specifically back home here to the International House, where His Royal Highness lived as a student. Your Royal Highness, welcome home. Today's event, AI and the Future of Work, Norway in Conversation with California, draws upon the long-standing relationships between Norway and UC Berkeley. The Peter Sæther Center is a co-sponsor of today's event, and I'd like to say a word about Peter Sæther. The most iconic imagery of UC Berkeley also bears the name Peter Sæther. The Sæther Gate marks the entrance to the great UC Berkeley, and the Sæther Tower stands guard over campus and the San Francisco Bay. Peter Sæther was a co-founder of the great University of California, Berkeley, and Peter Sæther was a Norwegian. That's what I was looking for. Thank you. Now, Norwegian author Karen Sveen wrote this excellent book, The Immigrant and the University, Peter Sæther and Gold Rush, California, published by University of California Press, that helps to tell this important story of the long-standing ties between Norway and the University of California, Berkeley. And therefore, it should perhaps come as no surprise that we have a world-class Scandinavian department here at UC Berkeley. For some 75 years, it's been teaching courses in Norwegian language, history, culture, and beyond. And I happen to know that His Royal Highness took a course from the Scandinavian department taught by Professor Mark Sandberg. And on any given day, you're likely to hear Norwegian spoken across this campus. And it's not just because of all those Norwegian classes being taught by the Scandinavian department, but also because we are so fortunate to have so many students from Norway attend this fine university. We've established a direct pipeline between Norway and California. So our Norwegian roots indeed run deep here at UC Berkeley, and our relationship with Norway is strong. Today, we leverage these long-standing ties and relationships as a resource and turn our collective attention to the modern challenge and opportunity represented by AI and the future of work. I'll soon invite our moderator and panelists up here to the stage for a conversation, which will begin with Professor Stuart Russell offering some stage-setting remarks, followed by a robust panel discussion. But first, it is my great honor and privilege to invite His Royal Highness to the lectern to address us all. Please join me in welcoming back home to the University of California, Berkeley, His Royal Highness Crown Prince Haakon.
Good morning, everyone. How are you? Are you doing well? It is really nice for me to be back, and thank you for the very nice introduction. Last time I was on this stage, I think I was in a costume. We were having a Halloween party, and I was DJing. When I was here at Berkeley and I lived here at International House, I installed my first modem, and I got an email address. So that's a while ago. That dates me, doesn't it? But it was great because I could email my friends back home, even if it was in the afternoon or at night. But I still had to call my mom before 1 o'clock, probably like some of you still need to do. But it's amazing to be back. It was a huge privilege to be able to study here at one of the world's leading universities, and I do sense some of the same vibe here still today. Today, there are even closer ties between Berkeley and Norway as the university collaborates with 8 Norwegian educational institutions. And you students are very lucky to be part of this community. One of the many good things about being a student is that life on campus, social life, discussions, cultural events, etc., can be just as important in your learning experience as the subjects that you are studying. At least that was how I saw it. The other students, the people that I met on my way, was a huge part of the experience and of learning about the world and life. And here at International House, you get to meet people from many parts of the world in the dining hall or wherever you meet them. Universities like UC Berkeley are vital in the world today, when freedom and democracy are under pressure. An educational environment that fosters free and critical thinking and nurtures the ability to separate truth from falsehood and is invaluable. So is another hallmark of the Berkeley experience, being part of a diverse community that allows you to find friends among people with totally different backgrounds than your own. I hope that all of you who are studying here today at Berkeley make the most out of your time and that you keep the Berkeley spirit alive in your life ahead, both personally and professionally. So with that introduction, I would like to say a few words leading up to today's discussion here on stage. The aim of the seminar is not only to strengthen cooperation between California and Norway, but also to attempt to address the question, can lessons from the Norwegian labor market help us manage the profound effects that artificial intelligence will have on our societies? The Bay Area is at the forefront of the technological transformation driven by AI. It is a global hub for innovation with a unique ecosystem of academic excellence fueled by an entrepreneurial spirit. Norway is one of the world's most digitalized countries, and Norwegians are quick to integrate new technology into society. But change seldom comes without challenge. Just to illustrate the speed of the technological development that we are experiencing, it took Airbnb about 2.5 years to reach 1 million subscribers. It took Spotify about 5 months, and ChatGPT 5 days. We are in the midst of a technology revolution, which is likely to create a shift in the way shift in the skills that we need and the way we collaborate in the workplace. So let's not forget that innovation is not only about inventing new things and developing new technology. Innovation is also about finding new and better ways to working together to respond to change as a society. This is particularly important when rapid technological change is placing strain on existing structures. For decades, the Norwegian labor market has been built on what is called the Norwegian model, the three-party model cooperation in which government, employer organizations, and employee organizations meet, discuss challenges, and agree on the way forward. This three-way cooperation encourages dialogue, prevents conflicts, and motivates the parties to reach agreement by promoting mutual trust, shared long-term interest, and honest collaboration. That sounds great, but it's not easy. It takes some hard work, and there is, of course, at times a lot of disagreement. But when agreement is reached, it is likely to last and be more robust. We believe that Norway's previous technological transition have succeeded in part thanks to this model. But we have much to learn from this area and California and the US as well. So it goes both ways. Together, here in the cradle of innovation, I am confident that we can combine our best practices to shape the industries and the labor market of tomorrow. Thank you very much for your attention.
And now I'd like to invite our panelists and moderator, if you'd kindly take the stage here, and we'll invite Professor Stuart Russell to offer some stage-setting remarks here up front, and then Professor Russell, if you'd kindly join the panel as well. So please, if you'd kindly make to the stage, and a warm round of applause for our panelist, moderator, and keynote here.
Thank you, Robert. Your Royal Highness, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to extend my own warm welcome to Berkeley, to our distinguished visitors from Norway, and wish you a pleasant stay in California. I don't think I had the prince in my class, but if it did, I'm sure I gave him a good grade. So, we're here to talk about AI and the future of work. I think we all know what work is, but what is AI? So AI is obviously about making machines intelligent, but what does that mean? So for most of the history of AI, we've followed what I'll call the standard model, that machines are intelligent to the extent that their actions can be expected to achieve their objectives. And this model was borrowed from economics and philosophy, the notion of rational behavior. For example, AlphaGo is given the objective of winning a game of Go. The navigation app on your phone is given the objective of finding the shortest route to the destination, and so on. This standard model is pervasive in AI, in control theory, in operations research, and in economics. We create objective achieving machinery, which could be a program, could be a corporation. We define objectives and we set it going. But AI differs from these other disciplines in its ambition. Our goal is general purpose AI, sometimes called AGI or artificial general intelligence, AI systems that exceed human capabilities along every relevant dimension. In my discussion today, and the discussion that governments should be having, is about general purpose AI and the future of work, rather than about AI as of April 16th, 2024. If you're making policy now for present-day AI, it's already too late. If we succeed in this goal of creating artificial general intelligence, we can use it to deliver what we humans already know how to deliver by definition. And that is, at least, a good standard of living for millions of people. We can do that on a far greater scale at far less cost. If we do that for everyone on Earth, it would be about a 10-fold increase in global GDP, or equivalent to a cash prize of $15 quadrillion. So that's a lower bound estimate on the value of AGI as a technology. Obviously, we could do much more than that. We could have much better healthcare, education, science, and politics. No, not politics. But what will humans do when almost all of what we currently call work is done by machines? Here's a well-known quotation. If every instrument could accomplish its own work, obeying or anticipating the will of others, if in like manner the shuttle would weave and the plectrum touch the lyre without a hand to guide them, chief workmen would not need servants. This came from Aristotle in 350 BC. So the question of technological unemployment is not a new one. So what will humans do? One answer is basically nothing, as shown in the film Wall-E. In Wall-E, machines are running our civilization for us, and as a result, humans have no need to learn. They are enfeebled and infantilized. The chain of knowledge and skills passed down for 100,000 generations even from pre-human times, is broken. Another answer is we can retrain people for all the new jobs in computer programming, robot engineering, and data science. This fails for at least two reasons. First of all, GPT-4 is already much better than most human programmers at routine computer programming tasks. And second, the world simply does not need 2.5 billion data scientists. So as you can see, there's a lot of wishful thinking going on. You will see many claims like these. AI will empower humans, not replace them. AI will automate tasks and not jobs, as if somehow I keep my job when all my tasks are gone. AI will take care of the tedious tasks, leaving you more time for the interesting parts of your job. So, for example, when AI systems are reading X-rays for all of the routine broken bones, then we humans will start breaking our legs in more interesting ways to keep the radiologists in work. And finally, there's economic theory. And this is a quote from a real economist. Any advance that increases labor productivity also tends to raise the demand for labor, and thus employment and wages. That is, there will be new jobs that don't exist yet because the equations say so. But here's a simple thought experiment. Imagine that technology creates a twin of every person, and your twin shows up to your job, whether it's your current job or one of the wonderful new jobs that will be created. Your twin is more cheerful, less hungover, and willing to work for nothing. How many of you would still have a job? So yes, there will be lots of new jobs, just not for humans. Now, this debate is often confused because there are effects in both directions. Consider, for example, what happens to house painters as painting technology improves, where the technology level we can imagine just being the width of the paintbrush. So in the early days of house painting, the brushes are so tiny that only the wealthiest princes can afford to have their houses painted. And then we reach the realm of practicality with real paintbrushes, and most homeowners have their houses painted once a decade or so, and tens of thousands of house painters find jobs. And then we have rollers a foot wide and spray guns effectively a meter wide. And the cost to paint a house goes down further. But demand saturates. People don't have their houses painted every 6 months. And so the number of house painters starts to drop. And then when one person manages a team of 100 house painting robots, equivalent to a paintbrush 100 meters wide, whole houses can be painted in an hour, and very few house painters will be working. So over time, as technology progresses, employment first grows rapidly, then it plateaus, and then it collapses. And this is a real measured phenomenon in almost all of the major industries from the 19th century onwards. The key point is that the effect of technology varies. In the early stages, it increases employment by making important tasks economically feasible. But then, as demand for those tasks saturates, technology improvements tend to lead to decreased employment in that sector. So what should the policy response be? If we ask the economists, they will tell you that there are two kinds of technologies. There are complementing technologies and there are substituting technologies. Complementing complements human labor and increases employment. Substituting means it substitutes for human labor and decreases employment. So the economists recommend that we develop complementing technologies with AI. But how can you tell? Actually, you can't. From the AI point of view, complementing is not a property of the technology itself. Just to give you an example from painting again. If people live in very big houses, then paint rollers are complementing because we still need lots of painters to paint all those enormous houses. But if people live in small houses, then paint rollers are substituting because now you can paint the houses so quickly that demand is met with fewer people. And so the suggestion would be not to try to develop complementing technologies, but to look at the needs of the human race that are unmet and figure out which of those can be met with AI technology so that they become economically feasible with human help in almost all cases. You can think of, for example, graffiti removal, shipping container inspection, recycling, all things that we would like to do at much greater scale, but which we don't do because it's too expensive to do it just with human beings. Another example would be education and healthcare in developing countries, where in most cases education beyond the first or second grade is unavailable. But eventually, all of these sectors will succumb to saturation as AI meets the demand, and then a decline in employment. So put another way, we've been using people as robots for about 10,000 years, and that phase of our history is about to end. Routine physical labor will not yield a subsistence wage. Routine mental labor will not yield a subsistence wage. So what's left? So this was a question asked by John Maynard Keynes in a famous paper in 1930 on the economic possibilities for our grandchildren. Thus, for the first time since his creation, man will be faced with his permanent problem: how to use his freedom from pressing economic cares, how to occupy the leisure which science will have won for him, to live wisely and agreeably and well. So that's the challenge. How? How will we avoid the Wall-E world where the human race becomes enfeebled? My guess is that we will be largely in interpersonal roles where humans have a comparative advantage over machines because only humans know what it's like to be a human. But to have high value, these interpersonal roles must be effective. After all, many current interpersonal roles, such as childcare, are low pay and low status because they are low skill. I can clearly remember my own childcare professional, my babysitter, trying to teach me to smoke at the age of 7. And they are low skill because we do not know how to do them well. So to fix this, we will need a new foundation in the human sciences, a new education system, new professions based on those scientific discoveries, and new economic structures to accommodate this different way of living. And all of this takes time. I'm reminded that Oxford University took 125 years to decide to have a geography degree, by which time it was too late. So in summary, AI has vast potential and unstoppable momentum, but general-purpose AI brings into question human economic roles. And wishful thinking is no substitute for real policy foresight and wise preparation. And that's why we're here. Thank you, and I look forward to our panel discussion.
Excellent comments. Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephen Raphael, and I'm the director of the Institute for Search in Labor and Employment and a professor in the Goldman School of Public Policy here at UC Berkeley. We are very fortunate today to have with us an extraordinary panel of individuals with deep expertise in and experience with the policies that govern and guide the Norwegian economy. For over a century, the Norwegian tripartite model is structured cooperation between labor unions, employers, and government, and is credited with fostering economic growth, labor market stability, and resiliency and shared prosperity. And today we have representation from the leaders of each of the three legs of the Norwegian tripartite model. The focus of our conversation is going to be precisely how do we sort of negotiate these challenges and ensure the shared prosperity associated with the benefits of artificial intelligence and the way our workplace is changing. And I'm curious to hear the answers. So we definitely struggle with this here in California in the United States, and it's going to be great to hear from our speakers today. So just to introduce everybody, Peggy Hessen Fulsvik is the president of the Norwegian Confederation of Trade Unions, the largest confederation of labor unions in the country. Ole Erik Amlid is the CEO of the Confederation of Norwegian Enterprise. Jan Christian Vestre is the Norwegian Minister of Trade and Industry. And then, of course, we've already met Professor Russell and heard his excellent comments this morning, who is professor in engineering and in the Division of Computer Sciences here at UC Berkeley. So I'd like to begin by just asking each of our panelists to briefly explain the Norwegian tripartite model, focusing on the role each organization or constituency plays in the tripartite. So I'd like to start with you, Minister Vestre. What role does the government play in the tripartite model?
Thank you so much. I just have to say, first of all, it's great to be here, so thank you so much for inviting us, and it's so cool to see this amount of people gathered here, and I think you made a really good decision by deciding to go to Berkeley. I can just tell you, I really regret that I didn't go abroad as a student, and when I'm here now, I really regret that I didn't go to Berkeley. So you did what all of us should have been doing. So that's really good, and thank you so much, Professor, for a truly inspirational speech you gave. And I think that's really an eye-opener to all of us. I do share your point of views, both on the challenges, but I really like the optimistic tone as well, that we are, dealing with some challenges, and we have to think about new policies and how to regulate and how do we move ahead, but at the same time we should really focus on the great potential and the tremendous opportunities that the new technology will give us. I mean, yesterday, for the first time, I was driving in one of the new cars. I don't remember the name now, but it's a fully autonomous car. I guess a lot of you have been doing it already, but I mean, it's so cool to be in a car, listening to great music, driving around in San Francisco with my sunglasses, feeling that I'm really a Californian, and there is no driver there. And the steering wheel is moving without anybody, and it's so smooth, it's so simple. I mean, this is the future of urban development. This is the future of urban mobility. Fossil-free, no emissions, no driver. I mean, imagine how those platforms can really change our lives and change our cities. I mean, we can totally redesign our cities. We don't need parking lots everywhere anymore. People don't have to own their own car anymore. There will be no emissions, no sound, and hopefully they are gentle to people as well. I do know that there have been some accidents. So the point is that we are facing tremendous opportunities. Then the tripartite system. I think that when we discuss all the challenges we are going through as societies now, we can either choose a top-down approach or we can choose a bottom-up approach. And what really scares me now in the world today is lack of trust. It's that more and more people don't have the sense of belonging. We see more increased conflicts. We see more polarized discussions, so that we are able, in all the transformations we're going through, and AI is one of them, obviously, but we're also going through a green transition, we're going through a digital transition, we are totally redesigning our societies, that we are able to listen to people, to involve people, to build trust between people and governments, between different nations, different countries, also across different sectors in our societies. That's a key, people. Because whatever challenge we are to handle in the years to come, if we don't have that mutual trust, if we don't have that sense of belonging, if people are scared about the development and they believe that the politicians or the technology companies or big capital or whatever it is are deciding on our future without involving people, then we are screwed, to be honest. Sorry, but that's the fact. So what we have seen in the Nordic countries with the tripartite system, with the labor unions, with the companies, with the governments, that we meet every week, that we sit down and discuss the issues, that Peggy's 1 million members really know that they have a channel straight into the cabinet office, that we always try to find pragmatic solutions and solutions that everybody can stand behind. That has led to some major reforms in Norway without people protesting in the street. I mean, we see pictures from other European countries when they're doing social reforms, for instance. hundreds of thousands, millions of people are protesting in the streets. And I mean, we do have some protests in Norway as well, and that's part of the democracy, and we should also encourage people to step up and tell their opinion. But I mean, if we can sit around the same table trying to find concrete solutions on the challenges we are facing together, that's so much better, because it builds trust, it gives people a sense of belonging, it's bottom up instead of top down, and it makes it possible to also go through those big reforms. And I think Ole Erik will confirm that, but also coming from the private sector myself, leading a Norwegian enterprise for 10 years, I also see that this is a great investment in increased productivity, increased innovation, increased value creation, even better profitability. So it's also great for the private sector that we follow up on this tripartite system. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Folsvik, so can I ask as well your role in the tripartite system, and maybe even if you could channel what your members are, what you're hearing from your member organizations about concerns about AI and technological development, how it's impacting the workplace?
Sure, thank you for having us here. I think it's great to have the opportunity to be part of these discussions today in a world that is changing so fast that I think all of us in the room and the rest of the world are worried if we will be able to be a part of these changes. And when it comes to IA, I think my members, my more than 1 million members, are concerned if they will be at the table when decisions are made on how to implement AI. I think that's one of the successes with the Norwegian model, that we are at the table where decisions are made. We are at the table in the companies that are members of Ole Erik, and we as an organization are around the table with the government, with the employers' organization, when decisions are made. And of course, we also have the hope that AI will increase productivity, and of course then for my members to be sure that they will be able to develop also at their workplace and not to be left behind because of new technology is very important. But also that we are going to have our share of that increased productivity, so that this is not only for the businesses to increase their incomes. Those incomes is also going to be shared by the workers. And I think that's maybe one of the most important values in the Norwegian models, that it's also about sharing. But to do that, we need to have strength as unions. So that's why it's essential that we have a high density of people as members organized. And today, just above 50% of the Norwegian workforce are members of a union. So it's also about strength, both on the union side, but also on the employer's side, that we have strong organizations. That's the way we have strength to make a difference when it comes to those discussions.
Wow. Okay. And Mr. Almlid, may I ask also about the role of the employer enterprises, in particular relationship? It doesn't sound like the relationship is particularly adversarial, and there's actually cooperation and co-determination, which is, I guess, language that we don't really hear much in the United States. So it would be interesting to hear about that.
Thank you very much, and good evening, and good morning, everyone. We'll stay here to the evening, so good evening when we're finished this, and thank you very much, Professor Russell, for a great speech. It's great to be here to talk about this tripartite model. I think the model has been able to develop over decades, and it's a model it's for cooperation, of course. It's about trust, but also about business opportunities. And if you see this from my point of view, representing half of the private sector in Norway, I'm quite sure that everyone in my organization, everyone representing business, will say that the tripartite model has been very important for business, because it's about cooperation. It's about adapting new technologies when it's come to AI. I think most of my companies and the CEOs will say that they see great opportunities when it comes to AI. There are challenges, of course, pointing out from Professor Russell as well, but mostly you see that this model is actually making it possible to adapt new technologies. And when it's come to cooperation, we have this cooperation every day. Actually, I think it's a model for trust and for cooperation, but also for handling conflict of interest. Because this is not a model for agreements, it's a model for handling disagreements. Because you have different positions, but you find common ground and you have mutual benefits when it comes to value creation, both for business and for employees. And that's why I'm quite sure that this model also will be important for us in the future when we have to handle conflicts and challenges regarding to AI. But I love this model, actually, because I think this model is the best way to develop Norway and to face the challenges we are facing when it comes to climate, health challenges, and when it comes to health challenges, we have to find common ground also handling the AI challenges. But I think this model has proven over years that it's good for business. And we believe in open economy. We believe in free trade. We believe in capitalism. But if you ask my CEOs, they will say that this model has made us able to change quickly when we have to face challenges in new markets. And when it's come to AI, I think same will happen. We'll find common ground. We will have to find policies and develop new laws so we can handle this as well. But there are some problems when it comes to AI, but I'm quite sure that we will fix this as well. You know, Jan Christian, Peggy, and me, we are on first names in this business, you know. We have meetings every week discussing this. And if you are able to find good solutions, I'm quite sure that we will find this also when it comes to AI challenges, of course.
So, Professor Russell, I want to build on some of your comments. You made an allusion to the recommendation, which I believe is the MIT panel, that was suggesting that we have to push AI in a direction where it complements human skills rather than substitutes. And when I read, at one of our research centers at IRLE, Labor Center has a number of studies on artificial intelligence in the workplace, and a lot of it focuses on ways that people are being monitored, ways that people are being replaced, ways that people's schedules are being titrated to maximize profit, but oftentimes at the expense of the worker. And I wonder if you think about the context of labor relations in the United States versus the tripartite model that we hear about, do we have more of an opportunity to shape AI in the direction of complementarity rather than substitutability if there's more dialogue than where we have a very decentralized system and a power imbalance?
Yeah, I would think that the kinds of applications that you describe, the modern equivalent of the time and motion study from the 1950s and 60s, would be very difficult for companies to impose on workers in most European countries, including Norway. And I think one of the things that's going on, and we saw this originally with outsourcing, is the process of turning work into compartmentalized, decontextualized chunks, which can then be sent to a supplier and completed and then returned. And I've seen this in my own work, where, for example, in my textbook, I did all the figures for my first edition in 1994, and the publisher paid me, I think, princely sum of $17 per figure for drawing my own figures. And in 2020, when I did the fourth edition, they were offering the princely sum of $15 per figure. So in real terms, about a threefold reduction in the rate of pay for that job, because almost all of that work has been outsourced because it can be turned into small pieces. And that's exactly the kind of thing that AI systems can do. And we're already seeing, for example, in the graphic arts marketplaces where companies can put jobs up for bid, we're already seeing the bid prices dropping dramatically in those markets. Same with freelance writing as well. You know, the whole idea of gig work, again, is to take what was a you know, full-time career kind of employment and turn it into small pieces that can be parceled out. And then those can be automated. I remember going to Uber, you know, before they had really even rolled out their current model with human drivers, they were already planning to replace those drivers with AI systems. And it was only because they killed an unsuspecting pedestrian that they terminated their self-driving project and sold up. But I think, you know, eventually that technology will spread beyond San Francisco and Phoenix, and we'll start to see all of the gig work for Uber and Lyft drivers gradually disappearing. So if you think about it, you know, Norway, like my home country, the UK, was very fortunate to discover a large amount of oil. Yeah. And Norway has been, I think, very successful in figuring out how to share the income. So it has an enormous sovereign wealth fund, which is owned by the country and the people, and provides benefits, including, I believe, supporting Norwegians to come to Berkeley for their studies, which is wonderful. So AI can function like that, basically as a, you know, from 10,000 feet as a tap that we can turn on that generates wealth. And the question is, how do you share that wealth? And when we look at countries, for example, in the Middle East, where that's their whole economy, is a tap that they turn on and money comes out. It hasn't worked out very well. Most of them are extremely authoritarian, and even in the ones that are, I would say, you know, relatively open, like the United Arab Emirates, there's still a huge question about what do people do. The citizens of the Emiratis, I think, struggle to find purpose in their lives because they don't need really to do very much.
Maybe can we build on this question of sharing wealth? I think this is fascinating. So in the US, so the last, say, 60 or 70 years, we've had productivity growth, GDP per capita has grown. But starting about 20, 25 years ago, we started to see, the proportion of our income that's going to labor shrinking and capital growing. And then with labor incomes became very unequal, where people with high levels of education were earning a lot, doing well, people with lower levels of education not so well. And it's created a lot of division, and part of it is the way our occupational structure has changed. You know, people believe that returns to capital or returns to education have shifted because of technology. But I'd be curious to hear, you know, from perspective of government, from labor, from how is this process facilitated? How do you decide what wages they should be, what's the appropriate return on capital, and how do you affect a more equal distribution of the gains from AI or international trade or whatever the economic innovation is?
Shall I start? Yeah. Well, part of this model is also, and a very important part of this model is how we negotiate, how we bargain our wages. We do that on both a national level. Every second year, it's Ole Erik and me who are leading those negotiations. Last year, we didn't succeed. We had a conflict. We went on strike for 4 days until we could agree again and let our workers come back to their workplaces. So I think it's important to remember that this is also part of the model, that sometimes we cannot reach an agreement, and then we have our right, our legal right to go on strike and to go into conflict. And that's a very important part of this. But then we negotiate wages on a national level. And we have a system where the export industry, the unions and the employers in the export industry, they negotiate first. They set kind of a how to say this, standard, which the rest of the work life will follow. And that means both that we don't see those, we don't have those big differences in wages, and we also make sure that the same, that we distribute the incomes to also the rest of the society. So we manage to keep the differences at a smaller level. So this is really an important part of the model.
Let me follow up. I think it's important for us, also from the business point of view, to point out that the answer on the AI challenges is not to have lower income for people. We can't lower the wages, because I think the Norwegian model is known for its compressed wage system, where engineer and engineer are having salaries on actually a lower level than other countries, but the lower incomes are much higher. So we have compressed wage system, which is important for us also in the future. I think from a business point of view, you have to use AI to meet the challenges when it's come to the lack of labor. You have to actually move labor forces from the unproductivity business to more productivity business. And that's why you can't meet this with the lower incomes. In Norway, you have to have a decent wage conditions. And you have to have a wage where you can have a family, and you can have a house, you can buy a car. And that's important for the stable, robust system in Norway. So I think we will have to stay focused on that, and therefore use the AI to implement system where we can move labor from to the more productivity part of business.
Can I follow up with a question for Minister Vestre as well? So I read with interest about this, I believe it's called the BTU or the TBU, an organization that provides wage estimates and price forecasts that serves as kind of a key trusted provider of information that's neutral and is seen as authoritative by both sides. And how important is that to the system, that you have an analyst that you say is the neutral arbiter and doesn't have skin in the game, so to speak, in terms of being with one side or the other?
It's actually very important, because then you frame the negotiations, you trust the numbers, and you use these numbers as a frame for the negotiations. So when you start this collective bargaining, which me and Peggy, it's a central part for me and Peggy, we actually trust these numbers. And it's very important, because then you trust the numbers also when you are finished the negotiations.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes this even more predictable for the government as well when we are putting together the national budget, for instance. One of the main challenges in our economy, like the American economy, and I mean, that's a destiny we are sharing with the entire Western world now, is how can we, control the inflation? How can we bring inflation down again? How can we increase people's income and make sure that, we can have a stable economic growth again? And we have different tools in that toolbox. Of course, how they are bargaining is really, really important, but also how we spend public money in a wise way is also very important, so that we have like a common ground here, a framework and some numbers that we can all rely on. That brings trust. It leads us to better decision-making processes, and we can be more precise on finding the right tools. If I can, I would just like to mention one thing. Some years ago, the OECD came out with this report about the Nordic model, and they called it the Norwegian or the Nordic puzzle. And they were basically asking the question, how is it possible, or how can it be that a country with quite powerful unions, a lot of regulations, I would say a fully developed public sector with public welfare systems, We have not lowest tax rates in the world, to be honest, not the opposite either, but I mean, sharing is caring in our society. How can it be that such a society still are performing way better than most countries in terms of productivity, in terms of innovation, in terms of economic growth, in terms of creativity? And what the OECD came to, their conclusion was that yes, societies with reduced inequalities, societies where you have this social security net, making sure that people can take huge risks without, losing their health insurance or their education for their kids, because that's covered by the welfare system. A society where we have the tripartite system, where we're actually sitting down together, finding common ground and solutions, that's very good for the economic growth. So, I mean, in Norway we say skape og dele, creating and sharing. And I really strongly believe in that model, not only for making sure that we have a sustainable economic growth, that we can reduce inequalities, also on a global level, that we can bring people out of poverty, making sure that we give all human beings equal opportunities, because that's fair. Everybody on this planet should have equal opportunities, and we can't stop before we are actually getting there. But it's also a very good platform to solve the issues when the issues are on the table. And just one last example. People have been fearing technologies since the first industrial revolutions in the 1800s. And your colleague, Peggy, in Sweden, he used to say that we don't fear new technology, but we do fear old technology. Because if we're not able to utilize the power in new technologies, we will be outcompeted by somebody else. And I think that's extremely cool that that's a message from the leader of the Sweden trade union. And Peggy, he became the Swedish prime minister, so we should be careful. You never know what might happen in the future.
She's ready for the election.
But I think that's the right way of seeing it, that this comes with tremendous opportunities. We can solve our challenges in a smarter, simple way. We have an aging population. There will be a lack of manpower to solve all the issues we are dealing with. So implementing the technology at the right time, and also by involving everybody, brings better societies. That's why I'm optimistic.
Mm. And let me follow up, Jan Christian. And when OECD was describing the Norwegian model as a success, they was pointing out that the collective bargaining was a very, very central part of this, because you have social partners that have the ability to see this in a long-term perspective. The wage formation in Norway is actually very like this. So you don't have these conflicts. You have conflicts last year, but we actually have, for many, many years, have been without conflicts, which has been very important for the system. And OECD's told us that this system is making us able to find solutions without conflicts over years.
And I have to add 4 days, Ole Erik, and I think conflicts is something different in a lot of other countries.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So still we are
was
handling
actually
it quite well.
Yeah.
But it's also, as we are speaking now, they are also bargaining in Norway. And on federation level, yes. And just to mention how this works, when these first runners had their negotiations 2 weeks ago now, one of the most difficult questions on the table was the right to continuous education for the workers. So then what happens in the tripartite model is that they negotiate, and then they send a letter to the government, to the prime minister, and the government will try to find a way to contribute to the negotiations. So they did actually reach a good agreement, I think, on how to work further on this continuous education, which is extremely important now with the introduction of AI, with the digitalization, and this is how the government can help us out in these situations. And it's also important to understand that we don't want the government to interfere in the negotiations as such when it comes to wage levels or those kind of questions, but in more general questions. that's also an important part of the model.
I'd like maybe for our final question just to build on some of these comments. So again, to draw on the US, we used to, I mean, for many years, I think a lot of the debates around our social safety net focused on issues of moral hazard. Are people not going to work or have too many kids or move to places where benefits were higher? And we've shifted towards thinking about them as human capital investments, where that people eat well, they're going to do well in school, they can grow, they can earn their potential. And we haven't gone all the way there yet, but thinking has shifted palpably. And I would just like to ask about that. Is if we think about how do we respond to AI and how are we best able to incorporate it in the workforce in an equal way, how important is having a very educated workforce and a nimble workforce, and how does the tripartite system help engage and foster human capital accumulation, and is training and retraining and K through 12 education, what we call it here, a central part of the mission, so to speak?
Yeah, I would say that the skills are crucial because the technology will always be there, and the technology is now developing faster than ever before. So if we don't have the skill set to utilize it, the full potential of it, I mean, then we're basically, we cannot use it. So investing in quality education, but not only for the youngsters, the students, the kids, but also making sure that we have platforms for lifelong learning, that we have education also within the workforce, in the companies, that we do invest here. And I think one more keyword here is that we should make sure that nobody is left behind. Because, I mean, this is also a question on getting everybody on board. If the skills are only provided for the minority of the people, then we cannot reach the full potential of it. But if we make sure also through politics, through this tripartite system, that we do invest, that the companies invest, that the trade unions and the members invest, that we from the governance perspective also invest in this, making sure that nobody is left behind, then we can utilize the full potential that lies within the new technologies. And of course it's difficult, but at least we need to have some visionary goals and a pathway ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's also what makes us makes it easier for us to go through changing times. We have a quite high level of education amongst our inhabitants, and we have to make sure that we will keep that also in the future. And we have taken a common initiative now, also with the government, to start a tour on AI. We are going to do that this autumn, I think, Ole Erik. And that's also with not with Jan Christian, but the other minister that is here. So again, cooperation and lowering people's anxiety for new technologies, I think, is important.
Yeah, and also when it comes to AI, we have to have this cooperation. We have to use the tripart model to face this. And it's, I think, as Peggy mentioned, we have these digital initiatives when we we'll see how we can work together also on this matter. And I think it's the key question is education, both for the younger people, but also when it comes to PhDs and taking the next step also to lift the working force. But also when it comes to laws, when it comes to policies, we have to work together to find solutions which can make us able to adapt the AI and the positive side of AI. And I'm quite sure that in 100 years, when we meet here again, I'm quite sure that we will also then say that the tripartite system was important to adapt this technology and use this to have better lives and better companies and better business in Norway as well.
And Professor Russell, last word to you. Can we avoid the walleye future by training our workers well and having a nimble workforce?
I think so, and I think actually an element of the Norwegian system that's very effective is the lifelong opportunity for education, because that provides a huge signal to the education system about what people need to learn not just when they're 18, but at every stage in their lives. And so it allows the education system to adapt faster to the needs of the situation. You know, I'm actually pretty confident about the Norwegian prospects for the age of AI, because when the last edition of my textbook came out, it was on Amazon US. We made it all the way to the 4,557th bestseller in the US. In Norway, we made it to number 8 on the Norwegian bestseller list. So I was very honored by that, and I think there are plenty of people in Norway who are learning about AI already. So that's great.
With that, I'd like us all to thank our wonderful panel here and for a great discussion. Thank you very much.
Today's event was a collaboration between the Nordic Center, the International House, and the Royal Norwegian Consulate General of San Francisco, and co-sponsored by the Peter Sæther Center, the Kavli Center, the Institute for Research on Labor and Employment, the Berkeley Roundtable on the International Economy, the Institute for Business and Social Impact, the Center for Responsible Business, the Scandinavian Department, and the Institute for European Studies. Period. Yes. And please join me again. Thank you so very much. Speaker, panelists, moderator, on behalf of us all, thank you. And we'd like to extend a very special thank you to our esteemed guest of honor, His Royal Highness, Crown Prince Haakon. Today's event, AI and the Future of Work, Norway in Conversation with California, has come to a close. Thank you all.